Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. On this episode, I am joined by Marshal Carper. Marshal is a Jiu-Jitsu brown belt who trains and teaches out of the academy in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He is a writer and also owns a marketing company that does a lot of Jiu-Jitsu specific content called Artechoke Media. Marshal has dealt with some injuries in the past, and he's finally back to training, and he's been teaching and training consistently now. And so I get to talk to Marshal about kind of his way back to training, what he's done to get himself back on the mats, how he's gotten himself healthier, his plans with the state of Jiu-Jitsu and kind of where he sees, his career and his trajectory going. So I hope you guys enjoy the podcast.
You are now listening to the Jiu-Jitsu Therapist Podcast.
All over Reddit. I see you all over Facebook. You've been busy.
I'm blown up. That's not true.
Well, your stuff's getting out there, so that's exciting.
Thank you. Well, I hope it's all right. What's your shirt you got over there? What you got on there?
It's MC Lars. It's a play off of a Run DMC shirt. Are you familiar with MC Lars?
I'm not. Is he a master of ceremonies?
Yeah, he's a nerdcore rapper.
I've never heard of that genre in my life.
So nerdcore rappers rap about everything from video games to classic literature.
All right.
Yeah. So like MC Lars, he did a whole album about Edgar Allan Poe, and they used it to raise money to save the Edgar Allan Poe house from being demolished.
That sounds awesome, actually.
Yeah. So he raps about a lot of really nerdy stuff. So if you ever get the chance to go to a nerdcore show, it's a special experience.
Okay.
So there's
how do I dress at a nerdcore show?
Any way you want, because
like a nerd, like a rapper.
I mean, they're all like super awkward and uncomfortable. So like all the it's a bunch of nerds and geeks. So like there's another nerdcore rapper that we worked with. His name's Mega Ran.
Okay.
And you know the video game Mega Man?
Yes.
Like blue guy. So for one of Mega Ran's songs, he puts on like the blaster, like Buster Blaster, and he's like rapping with the Buster Blaster on because he's singing songs about Mega Man and Mega Man's life and stuff. Yeah. So
we should probably just nerd out about this podcast then. Because I see you all the time talking about video games and such.
Yeah.
I have a little bit, I don't know. You like, I think Zelda is one of your go-tos. You like Zelda?
I've been doing the retro thing lately, yeah, so I got some Zelda.
I never got into Zelda. Never did.
So you should definitely grab an emulator and at least play Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo.
I don't have the time, man. It's the funny thing, last time we spoke, do you know when that was?
It's got to be... Is it 2 years now?
It's been a year. It was February of 2017.
Huh.
You were on my 20th podcast. This is the 42nd one.
Wow.
So, yeah, moving on up, right? No,
that's impressive. Most people, they do like 5 episodes of a podcast and they're done because it's a lot of work.
It's fun, man. It's like, you meet people and then you see their progress like on social media or whatever, which is one of the nice things about social media. Sometimes I have a love-hate relationship with social media, but it's cool because you get to you see people like, for example, take you. Last time we talked, you were dealing with injuries, knee injuries. Now I'm seeing you're like got a brown belt. You're on the mats training. You're doing. There's a seminar I think you were going to do. I don't know if that worked out or something. Maybe happened with that.
No, so Jiu-Jitsu politics with the kibosh on that one.
Jiu-Jitsu politics.
The word legal action is getting thrown around.
That.
So, yeah.
All right. So, I wanted to ask you, man, how did you find your way back to Jiu-Jitsu? How did you find yourself back to the mats?
Well, so what you might not have seen on social media, because I've kept it pretty low-key, is that my health is still not great.
Okay.
My joints are doing a lot better. So when we talked, I was dealing with a bunch of knee injury stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So to recap, anybody that's listening, I've had 4 knee surgeries, 3 on one knee, 1 on the other. I've had a hernia repair, and then I've got like the usual litany of like just jiu-jitsu stuff that's hanging around. So I've been dealing with that, and you gave me a bunch of tips on the knee recovery stuff, and I picked up a strength training routine with like a personal trainer.
Yeah.
After doing a bunch of physical therapy. So I found a physical therapist that really understood grappling.
That's rare and awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't necessarily like a grappler himself, but he took the time he went and watched, basically he's like, just watch some wrestling videos, and you'll kind of have an idea of what I'm trying to do. And he got it, and he understood that my goals are very different from like the 75-year-old lady next to me on the other exercise bike get over a knee replacement. Right, like we have very different goals, me and Edna here. So that was very helpful. But in the time since we've talked, I had I'm probably mispronouncing this, a perineal strain or a perennial strain, the ligament outside the ankle going down the calf or whatever. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, perineal, yeah.
Perineal. So that hurt really bad.
So that's basically kind of like the outer calf kind of down to the ankle.
But it was super weird because I'd be fine. I could run on it. I could lift on it. I could do most of jiu-jitsu just fine. But if someone grabbed it just the right way, I thought my leg was going to explode. I was like, what is this kind of pain?
How did you injure it, do you think?
I don't actually know.
There you go. All right.
I mean, there was never a moment where I was like, oh, God, that really hurts. It just started bothering me. Maybe it was an impact thing or something like that, but I could never track it down to a specific thing. So I pulled that, did some PT. In January, I got costochondritis.
Okay. Explain that.
So the lining of your chest cavity gets inflamed. I thought I was having a heart attack. Because it felt that bad. Like, woke up at 3 a.m, clutching my chest, and my wife is
3
like,
in the morning. Okay. Wow.
What's going on? What's going on? Apparently they don't know what causes it. And it can go away from anywhere between 2 weeks and a year.
Okay.
Which is a really weird timeline. I did some Googling, and I think I know why I got it, because apparently it can also be caused by having exceptionally large breasts. So maybe that strain caused that for me. Yeah.
Are you large-breasted? Or
That was trying to make a joke.
No, I don't know. Maybe you are. I've only seen it from the shoulders up. Like it's weird, and itis means inflammation, basically. So like inflammation of the bones, and it's weird. I don't know why you would get or how you would. I was thinking maybe impact type stuff, like somehow, but I don't know.
Well, I mean that's the thing. Like. Couldn't really pinpoint any sort of like rib injuries. So they did a bunch of chest x-rays, and it was my upper chest that was hurting. And they were like, well, we can see down here where you jacked up your ribs before. So all the previous jiu-jitsu garbage.
So you had like some scar tissue or something?
Yeah, I probably fractured something at some point, hairline kind of stuff, and just let it heal back. But I mean, so my body is still not super durable. I'm doing a lot better than I was doing before. And I think strength training is a big part of that. And I've also just really scaled back what I expect out of myself for jiu-jitsu in terms of like my performance. So since we last talked, I'm at a new school. I run the jiu-jitsu program there. Like I'm the head instructor. It's an MMA focused school. So I got all these young gun fighters that are trying to be like the next UFC star. So that makes rolling very interesting.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of those like honest conversations with people in the gym. It's like, hey, if you're looking for some stud grappler that's going to go toe to toe with you for an hour, I'm not that guy. I'll show you anything you want, but I'm not going to be doing rounds with the pros,
How is that? You just received your brown belt. I mean, how long ago has it been?
Maybe 2 years for my brown belt.
Oh, 2 years.
I don't know.
That's a long time.
I don't know. It's I didn't do a lot of fanfare when I got it. I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah, well, the thing is, obviously with a new belt, kind of like the Spider-Man theme, like with more power, there comes more responsibility. Whatever. What is it with?
Oh man, you're just trying to trigger me. It's Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben says it. With great power comes great responsibility.
Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot that. It's terrible. Yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. So like you get a brown belt, that's a lot more, a bigger target. A lot more people look up to you. You might find yourself in the whole, teacher role, instructor position. So like how have you kind of coped, with knowing that maybe you're not going to be out there going toe to toe with these guys and kind of scaling back and just being humbled, by that?
So the nice thing that's made the brown belt transition easier is I was doing a lot of the higher jiu-jitsu responsibility stuff before I got my brown belt. So like I ran a satellite location for the gym I used to be a part of when I was a purple belt. I'd been teaching classes for the gym I used to be a part of since I was a blue belt. There was a time when I was teaching 3 or 4 classes a week as a purple belt. So I had a lot of that responsibility early on. I don't know if that was just out of necessity that I was there and I could cover stuff, or maybe I had some knack for teaching. I don't know, but I was doing a lot of it. So when I got my brown belt, the in-gym dynamic, I never really felt like changed all that much because people just already knew me. What changes, though, is when you wear a brown belt, you go somewhere else. Right. Like you go to visit, because now there's a couple of levels of extra people that are scoping you out and they see what belt you're wearing. But that's not a huge problem for me. Most of the gyms that I go to train at, if I travel, they already know me. I don't do a lot of drop-ins in general just because of my schedule. And if I do drop-ins, I try to get a feel for the people that are there before I go, just because I feel like I'm held together with bubble gum. So if you stick me with the super athletic blue belt that's 20 years old and trains 8 hours a day, there's a good chance that
we had a couple guys actually. They drop in from we live in Louisville, a couple guys from Lexington. So it's just like 70 miles or so down the road. And they've got some good gyms out there. And the blue belt dude just showed up and looked athletic. There's a purple, a blue, and a white. And this guy was tough. And I was like, I'm like, damn, I don't remember. And I was talking to him. I was like, man, I don't remember being this skilled as a blue belt, being this technical and having these, and especially, when you're a blue belt and you see a brown belt, you start salivating. You're like, man, I want to see if I can get this guy in something. You're going to throw your A game at him, and you're going to go at him. And I kind of try to kind of feel them out because I don't know. I don't know if if I'm going to crush them or if I'm going to be in for a war. I don't assume anything. I just kind of try to feel them out. And this guy was super tough. But I was like, yeah, you get some of these blue belts. Now, blue belts, I mean, shit, back in the day, if you're a blue belt and you got a brown belt, I mean, it's going to be brown belt's going to run all over them. They're really going to, do whatever they want. But now, like you said, 20-year-old blue belt, athletic, that's got a little, couple years under their belt, got a little YouTube, watching a little YouTube. That does a lot. YouTube has been a huge, I think, proponent, honestly, in all seriousness, has been huge in the growth of jiu-jitsu. I think probably way more than we think.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I got my start just before YouTube became a real thing. I got my start when we were still exchanging magazines and bootleg DVDs.
Yeah.
Check out Technique, and YouTube picked up a little bit after that. But even at that point, brown and black belts were saying, man, the blue belts of today are way different from blue belts at my time. And now I'm saying the same thing. And I think you're right about the way the internet's impacted how we learn and what we see and how much gets shared. I think that's done a lot. The competition scene is also pretty serious. Yes. I forget who did this study. Maybe it was Bishop BJJ, Tyler Bishop, and I think his wife's Anna. They do the science of BJJ stuff.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to look them up.
Yeah, I mean, you'll like their stuff. I think they did an article where this is a few years ago where everyone that medaled at Worlds purple belt and up was a full-time grappler.
Yeah,
they were professionals. At purple belt and up. And I would not be surprised if now it's blue belt and up, just as people have, whether it's mom and dad's money or they have some sort of resources, or maybe they're just roughing it old school Marcelo Garcia style, sleeping on the mats overnight to train a bunch. That when you look at full-time blue belt competitors, that's a totally different animal from what we had when we were blue belts. That's just that mat time alone, that consistently just gives you a certain level of sharpness that even if someone like me theoretically has more knowledge and can teach them stuff,
right,
that like in the moment athletic awareness it's really tough. I mean, and credit to them because they've earned it because they spent the mat time, but
right.
It makes you feel sad when a blue belt's really giving you a hard time.
Man, and it's one of those things, like, you can be sad about it, I guess. Yeah, it's kind of, sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow for sure, because not just the mat time, but the evolution of the movements and the skills and the different techniques and the leg lock game. And the leg lock game's been around, but the popularity of the leg lock game as of late has gotten so much bigger that people have, like, taken it and extrapolated it and made it such a, huge thing where pretty much you're just attacking legs the whole time. You're letting people pass your guard or, get dominant positions so you can get a leg. It's I don't know if it's the great equalizer or what it is, but man, it's definitely changed a lot. And I'm sure there'll be something else down the line. I don't know what that is, but the game's always evolving and have so many infinite movements in the body, and I think I don't know, something's going to happen. There's going to be something new that comes along, and it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun to be a part of it. But also, you almost don't want to, us being a little bit older, myself, having, a family and a full-time job, it's like you almost don't want to let the game pass you by. You want to kind of be, on top of kind of riding that wave of kind of knowing the techniques and at least having some knowledge of them. Otherwise, you could be like in deep waters with a blue belt that's really good at, certain positions. So.
Yeah, I mean, keeping up with the game is definitely a challenge. I just have students come to me all the time like, hey, have you seen this? Do you know this? Do you know that? And it's like, well, honestly, there's just a lot of stuff I don't know, and there's probably going to be a lot of stuff I never know, but I'm also just one guy. So if you want to go learn something, tell me, let's figure it out and work on it. We could probably bring in somebody that can do a seminar on it. I mean, most of the black belts that I know, they know a lot of moves, but they don't use a ton of moves.
Yeah.
They've got like their bag of tricks, their tried and true stuff. Because that's just what they've been working on for 15 years or whatever. And that's what got them to be a black belt. And then you have all this like theoretical knowledge on top of it, let alone all the new theory that's coming up behind it. I mean, it's almost unreasonable to expect any instructor. And I'm kind of like throwing this out there to students that might be, wondering why, the 55-year-old instructor is not showing them the honey pot position or whatever.
Honey hole. Like, it's the honey hole. Come on.
Yeah, the honey hole. Excuse me. That's how big my leg lock. I'm working on my leg lock game very slowly. I am. It's terrifying, but I'm working on it. Yeah, I mean, it's just really tough for any person to know everything, and that's also, I think, a thing for us to remember individually. Because you can get pretty bummed out if someone is just working on this one thing. Like, I remember rolling with kids that were doing barambolos all the time.
Yeah.
It was like, no, my neck can't handle that, so I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on it. But it's really cool that you're learning it. Show me what you figured out.
Yeah.
And let's just evolving together.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a great point. Also, the fact that you're going to build your game around what you're able to do. And, what you kind of grew up on or learned, like, your body with your knees, there's certain things you're not going to play, possibly, any kind of De La Riva type stuff, which is going to put some torque on your knees, or maybe rubber guard, which is not supposed to quote unquote put torque on your knees, but it will. You got to have really mobile hips is the key, but you're still torquing I don't care how mobile your hips are from a physical therapy standpoint. In my biomechanical opinion, you're always putting pressure on those knees. You're putting a force on those knees that's just going to, especially with people, if you get them in a rubber guard position and somebody's trying to pop their way out of it or, posture up, you're going to put some torque on those knees. So yeah, you're not going to learn stuff that primarily you're not going to use. I think you'll learn it in a way to know what it is and what to expect, maybe how to defend or how to avoid it, from that aspect. But yeah, especially, training as long as, you and I have, you're going to build, you're going to have those techniques. Even when you're a purple belt, you're going to have probably brown or black belt techniques that you have that are part of your game, whether it's butterfly or whatever. That's just going to happen. And there's going to be barambolas you're not going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Your body can't do it, And I think there's something to be said about learning those techniques, but not relying on some of these inverted techniques. I think that the inverted techniques are okay and they're good, and I think most people can do them. What I feel the problem is if you get stacked up or compressed when you're in those techniques. That's when, because you're already in a position where you're used to, but then you're taking even past your range that you're comfortable in. That's where people get injured. So
yeah, I worry about the longevity of students, especially young ones. Like you mentioned rubber guard. I was a rubber guard fanatic up through like midway through my blue belt. Mm-hmm. Every match I did, I was pulling rubber guard, and I was winning tournaments with it, but my knees did not hold up. And I'm not going to say rubber guard caused that problem. I know for sure there's a lot of genetic stuff I've got going on with my joints just based on all the pictures my surgeon takes every time he cuts me open. But yeah, I mean, there's just stuff that obviously has more wear and tear than others. And I think there's stupid stuff too that contributes a lot of wear and tear that we also ignore. I think super grip heavy games. Yeah. Have you seen, is it Paulo Meow's hands where it looks like a 9-year-old man with knuckles destroyed?
Mangled.
I mean, that's just as serious as I think being stacked up. I mean, we don't look at it as being that bad of a wear and tear, but still something that you probably should have let go of.
Right.
Probably should have maybe made your game a little less grip centric if your hands are like that. But we don't think about training for longevity. We think about winning today, and we don't think about what it's going to mean for our bodies 5 years from now, 10 years from now, because the match now feels so important.
Yeah,
so I'm not going to let go of this grip. I'm going to let you halfway break my fingers if that's what it's going to take.
You bring up a great point. So I had my last tournament was a brown belt. It was my second tournament brown belt. And everybody in my gym knows I like to do a loop choke. Loop choke's kind of my thing. So I don't know if you can see my finger, but I tore it in the match. I tore it. I heard it pop. My opponent heard it pop, and then I re-gripped and I finished the choke. And I knew I tore it. I heard it and I felt it and my finger swelled up, and it's, now, people know me for like a loop choke or that setup, that cross collar choke, but now I don't really play it as much. I kind of almost try to save my hands because it hurts, it hurts to get that grip. So I know what you're saying. And I think I should have, in the heat of the moment in a match where you got adrenaline pumping, I had the submission and I felt like I had it, and, I did. And I finished it, but, I paid for it. I'm going to probably pay for it for a long time. But yeah, those grip heavy. And so I don't do a ton of no-gi just because of my schedule. But when I did no-gi, I've done it, recently I tried to do a little more, and I was like, man, my hands feel so much better. I enjoyed it. I really liked it. And I really liked the no-gi aspect because I do try to play some legs and do some different things and kind of roll in to some different positions, maybe inverted, do some inverted stuff. And, but my hands felt better, but you're still going to grip. You're going to grip your wrist. You're going to grab the back of the head and lat and tricep. But yeah, I think that's where, being good at both or being competent in gi and no gi, we always get that discussion. Gi, no gi, which one's better, which one's more applicable to what? I think they're both applicable, and that's why I think it's important. If you want to save your hands, gi might be, not the best all the time, or you may have to just let go of grips, know when you're in a position and just let go.
Yeah, we did a book with a guy named Jeff Rockwell. He's my jiu-jitsu instructor now. Sit-up escape system, and he tells a story about how he was like a big De La Riva spider guard guy for a long time, and he would have to go home and ice his hands for like 20 minutes a night after training, and it got to the point that he's had to make a decision whether he could actually continue doing jiu-jitsu like this or not.
Yeah.
So in black belt, he totally redoes his game to where he's relying on grips almost never, because it's all collar tie frames and hooks and overhooks and stuff, even in a gi. It's the same kind of thing you're talking about. You're just kind of recognizing where your body is. And you sometimes have to make a choice that is going to be hard now, but better for you in the future.
How important is that, though, for longevity, Like it's just it's huge, and there's things you can do, but the ligaments that you tear in your hands, and they're going to be deformed. It's just going to lead to arthritic changes. It's just going to happen. I don't care who you are. Those ligaments are only so strong, and then if you decide that you don't want to let go of a grip, that shit happens, and it's tough, and it hurts, and I can't even close my fist all the way because of that finger, but it sucks and bugs me. Every morning I wake up and I feel it. I feel it stiff, and I stretch it out every morning, but man, I know it's just it's not right. It's never going to be at that point, but.
Yeah, that's brutal. I mean, part of it too, it's contact sport. You're going to get bumped up. It's going to get banged up. I mean, if you're going to be a lifetime runner, you're basically accepting that your knees are going to be shot. And then at some point, there's just this acceptance of if you're going to be active, things are going to get beat up. That's just the reality of it. You only have so many repetitions in a joint that you can do. It's going to wear out eventually. But how can you be smart about it at the time, right? And that's my perspective. At least you're the professional physical therapist.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, and I think that's where modification. That's the thing about jiu-jitsu. You can get injured in jiu-jitsu, but you can also do jiu-jitsu with 2 bum knees or whatever, and bum hands and whatever you can, because there's the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu is the modifications. There's so many modifications. Actually, we were talking about you going to physical therapy. I had a physical therapist reach out to me. I don't know where she was from, but she had a patient with she dislocated her patella. And this patient's got some other issues going on, and she was asking me about these positions, she wants to do this or should she do that? And she had no idea on jiu-jitsu, no idea on positions. And I was like, so I started Googling and YouTubing, positions, and I started sending her, look at this, watch this. And then we start talking through how you can kind of mimic those movements, and that's the thing, though. Somebody that's got some difficult diseases that affect their strength and affect their body. I mean, shit, you can do jiu-jitsu with no legs. You can do jiu-jitsu with being paralyzed. That's the beautiful thing. You can do jiu-jitsu. You don't have to always roll. I think it's hard as an upper belt trying to uphold that. I have this upper belt. I have to uphold that belt. But man, there's a lot of different ways I think I'm starting to realize to uphold that belt. And it's not always with rolling. There's a lot of other ways. I think you've shown that through teaching, which I think can make you a much better jiu-jitsu practitioner.
That's very kind of you to say. Yeah, I mean, it's weird because if you read the jiu-jitsu forums and stuff like that, there's a lot of, your instructor doesn't roll with everybody in class. You're at the wrong kind of gym. And that's really tough for me because I roll as much as I can with my students, but there's still times where I just have to be aware of my limitations. And it's never gotten easier to look at someone and say, no thanks, we're not going to roll, because I really do. I really do want to roll. But whether it's the size or the ability, or maybe they just don't have the control, and I just have to start weighing, okay, I could roll with you for 5 minutes, and then maybe I'm going to have to sit out for 6 months.
Yeah.
I have to make that choice for myself, my students, my family, because every time I get hurt, that means that my wife basically has to take care of everything. Yeah. On top of taking care of me, and taking care of me is not a pleasant experience. I get really grumpy when I can't train.
Yes, I feel the same way.
But yeah, I mean, that opportunity that comes up where sometimes you have to say no to a role or say no to a certain position. Doesn't happen very much these days, but when I was taking a bunch of classes, sometimes there would just be a class that's I can't physically do what you're teaching. I'm sure it's great, but my knee is just not, it hurts when I put my knee in the spot you're asking me to. So I have to step back from this.
I think everybody's got a hard, it's hard. That's a hard thing, man. That's a hard pill to swallow, honestly. It's hard to know that, like you said, you want to uphold that belt. That's hard to. I had the similar situation. I think I had a tournament coming up, and my shoulder, I had tweaked. I think I put an omoplata. I popped out of it, but it had tweaked my shoulder pretty bad. And there was a white belt, younger guy. He's a wrestler. Asked me to roll, and I was like, I'm just gonna go light. And he was kind of, if you're a new guy, you can't really go light. You don't know how to go light. You start going, and so I got pissed off, and I went after him a little bit, and he could tell, that kind of turned it on. And I was talking to my coach, and I was like, man, am I wrong for doing that? Should I, And he basically explained it. Sometimes you got to say, man, nothing personal. I just can't roll. I can't, you got to, like you said, longevity, your health is most important. I mean, it sucks to say no because people are going to say, oh, is he saying no to me because he's scared I'm going to tap him or whatever, And, that's something you got to go home with and deal with, I think. But it's something we deal with as kind of guys that have been in jiu-jitsu for a long time. How we were, how I was as a blue belt or a upper level, 4-stripe white belt. I was hungry. I wanted some of these. I wanted the necks of some of these upper belts. And every time you get an upper belt, you're like, I fucking tapped that purple belt. I'm a white belt or whatever. You feel good. And now we're on the other end of that. And it's like, well, there's nothing really to be gained of tapping a blue belt or, when we're a brown belt. It's not, what is it? Well, what do we get out of it? Tapped a lower belt. What do they get out of it? They tapped an upper belt. It's I don't know if that's what you consider. It's a hard thing in the sport for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that the leave your ego at the door thing, was total bullshit because nobody does. I've never met a single person that does.
I think there are some. I don't know if I agree. It's hard as fucking hell to do that.
I've never met them if that's the case, because it's just that it's always buzzing in the back of your head. It's always there, making you think like, oh, like you said, this blue belt's starting to get something on me.
Yeah, you gotta turn it back on.
Yeah, and then same thing. The blue belt's like, oh, I can get something on a purple belt or a brown belt, and that same thing. It's like this is self reward. The feeding the ego sort of thing. But, I mean, it's tough. It's part of the sport. I mean, it's competitive sport. So people are going to do that. I think it's a matter of if that competitive nature stays friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the big thing. Like I've rolled with black belts that I've been able to tap, but they still know a mountain of stuff that I don't.
Right.
And anything they say, I'm going to listen. Because, it's just sometimes they're just a lot older than me, or maybe I'm a bit bigger, or maybe they're just hurt. Like there's all kinds of reasons that I might be able to tap an upper belt, but being physically better doesn't necessarily mean that I'm actually the better grappler if you like measure everything out,
Sure. Yeah.
And people that fight me about that, I'm like, would you take boxing lessons from Freddie Roach? And they're like, oh yeah, he's a great boxing coach. I was like, pretty mediocre professional fighter. I mean, he was no Mike Tyson or, he wasn't that great of a competitor. He had some wins, but turns out he was a fantastic coach.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't put him in the ring with Conor McGregor and expect him to win, right?
No, I wouldn't. So Marshall, what would you say is your relationship with jiu-jitsu? Like, I wanted to ask you, how do you feel? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Why did you put yourself kind of in the situation where you possibly have to change gyms and come back and do this stuff? What would you say? What do you love about it still after all these years?
Oh, geez, that's a weird question. Because I don't have a good answer.
It's a good question.
Answer for that. I mean,
took notes, man. Let's go.
What's that?
I'm prepared. I took notes. I want to ask you some stuff, man. I know you're a smart guy and you have a good you write a lot and you have a way with words. So I want to know. I want to know how you feel about it.
I think relationship's the right word. I think even the healthiest of relationships are never going to be purely positive ecstasy all the time because that's just not the way a relationship works. And I would say that applies to jiu-jitsu where the highs are high because sometimes you get some really low lows and that there's always going to be that ebb and flow of it. I think you can do a lot to keep the lows from being as low as they need to be. Like I was pretty emo about all my injuries and got pretty depressed. You could probably look through my Facebook history and find a lot of stuff of me just like really being, really wallowing in my self-pity of being hurt all the time. Yeah, I mean, I love the sport for its potential. I think it has potential to do a lot of good. I don't think it does a lot of good all the time. But I think it has potential to do a lot of things that it's not right now. It's probably on a whole like community, society level. On the individual level, I think it's taught me a lot about myself. I think through jiu-jitsu, I've had a lot of opportunities to become a better person that jiu-jitsu kind of opened the door for. I don't know if I'd say that jiu-jitsu itself makes you a better person. I think there's plenty of examples where bad people do jiu-jitsu because it's just like bad people getting a gun. They learn the gun. So, you know, it's just one of those things. So I don't think jiu-jitsu itself automatically makes you a better person, but I think it can be a path to being a better person potentially. Changing gyms was hard. I was at the same gym for 10, 11 years, something like that.
Okay.
So making that switch was a big thing. So it's almost like leaving a family. But it wasn't a good fit for me anymore. And my life's a lot better since I found a better fit. So not saying that the gym's a bad place or anything like that. That's not the discussion. The discussion is more of it wasn't the fit for me anymore. So I had to also kind of be an adult there and recognize that people change. And sometimes that means like a relationship. Sometimes you have to end the relationship. It doesn't stay permanently, right?
Yeah, sure.
So that's a pretty grandiose answer to your pretty challenging question. Did I get?
I want to kind of touch base a little bit on. I want to touch on a couple of those points. Why did you feel like you had the? And you don't have to get into it if you don't want to. But why did you feel the need to change gyms? Why now? And what was it about your other gym, or what was it about yourself that you changed that warranted that that switch?
Yeah, I don't think there's a safe way for me to answer that question.
Okay.
Yeah, we just weren't fit anymore. Okay. And that's really the best way that I could answer that.
Okay.
While being recorded.
What about, that's fine, man. That's okay. What about, so that kind of brings me to another point, the politics, So you talked about a little bit of politics of jiu-jitsu. What about those politics you find difficult or what those things that you don't agree with? What are some of the politics? I know that before you answer, I know that like sometimes certain coaches don't want you to cross train. I think that maybe is part of a politics. They don't want you to train in other gyms. My coach always says, if you're confident in what you teach, your people are your students are gonna, come back and learn from you. So what about the politics that you don't agree with or you do?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest things is that weird loyalty idea that has been a part of jiu-jitsu probably for as long as jiu-jitsu's been a thing. If we kind of look back at the history of all the beach fights and everything that happened around whose gym was better and who was training with who. That's a pretty big part of where I think jiu-jitsu has potential to improve quite a bit. I think a lot of the conflict comes from we have these classic martial arts values that we have in our head that we like in theory. So these like very Eastern ideas of like humbling yourself and being loyal and being part of this team and kind of stripping away the ego and all this stuff where we have this very like existential layer on top of the actual martial arts training, right? Almost like semi-spiritual in a way. But then you put Western capitalism on top of that and things get really weird really fast. So you're going to demand absolute loyalty from a student. Not allowed to train anywhere else. You're on this team. That's it. You go anywhere else, you're a traitor. You have all kinds of special Portuguese words from soap operas to call traitors. And that's just how it's going to be. Oh, you lost your job and you can't pay anymore? Get out. Like, that's how a lot of jiu-jitsu politics work. They demand like absolute loyalty on this one-way street. And the one-way street's from bottom to top. But when it comes for the top to be loyal, like when somebody has a hard time and you just can't pay a gym membership, loyalty ends. And I don't think that you can have both value systems coexist that way. I think you're either going to have this like totally Eastern philosophy, and we're here to train martial arts and we're loyal to each other and that's it. Or you're going to have the business philosophy. And I think the business philosophy is always just looking for its self-interest. So we don't want you to train anywhere else because we don't want you to leave gyms because we're going to lose $150 a month or whatever you're paying for your membership, you know? So yeah, the politics are really hard. And I think that creates a lot of unnecessary conflict as you get this like team versus team mentality. Cause like most of the people I train with, they have kids, they have jobs. Like, dude, you're a math teacher. You're not signing up to be part of some tribal rivalry with this gym across town. You're 45. You're here for a hobby. Why are we wrapping this kind of thing into it? It's just not where the sport needs to be anymore, I don't think. But a lot of people insist that it stays. And a lot of times the people that talk the most about being open and being a family and having this community are the worst perpetrators of it. So it's really hard to suss out who the good eggs are and who the bad eggs are because they're all saying the same stuff when they're on the pulpit. But when they're behind the scenes, that's when the real dirt happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two points you kind of brought up or that I see. One is that you have to build that loyalty, that family, you know, kind of that atmosphere like we're all brothers or sisters or we're all part of a family and it's us kind of against everyone, I think, because that builds some special – that can make some special training sessions, some special gym environments. You know, that can make some pretty special environments. And that's, I think, our gym, you know, where we train, we have a really good environment and it's a family environment. You know, you always have, like you said, you got some people that aren't the best fits and they'll usually kind of find their way to another gym or whatever. But I think that, like, we are the best kind of that motivation. I think that does breed rivalry, but also breeds competition. And competition is good. You know, I think you have to have – jiu-jitsu is about competition, really. It's about one man or one person defending or defeating the other, really, you know. It is a combat sport, so to speak. You know, it is a, you know, physical sport. So, yeah, I think you have to feel I think it goes from the instructor has to feel confident in what he does and his environment that he sets, and the gym environment has got to be. I mean, if you are scared about people cross training, then I think it's something internally within you that's not fulfilled. Personally, that's just what I feel.
Yeah, the competition angle, like you said, it's tough. It seems like it takes a lot of maturity to be competitive with a person, but not make that a personal competition.
Yeah.
Right?
True. So,
you know, we always want to talk about good sportsmanship. We always want to talk about respecting opponents and things like that. But it's a lot of times people take it personally when they start getting beat up. Or if the gym across town starts getting students, they take it personally that they're not the ones getting students. So I think it's hard, and I don't think I'm a good example of it. So I'm trying not to be preachy on this front because I have a lot in my own character that I'm working on.
Yeah. that
I'm trying to improve. So I'm by all means not the model for the things I'm advocating people be. I'm still working on it myself, but I think a good competitor takes a pretty high level of maturity to be able to say that this is where the line on the sport ends, and I'm not going to cross it into attacking you as a human being or trying to, go after your character or whatever, because we are just competing on the sports side, and that's where it has to stop. And I think by and large, most hobbyist jiu-jitsu practitioners are good at that because I don't think they've raised the stakes that high in their head. You know, like your weekend warrior guy, the guy that can train 3 days a week and because he has a job and kids, that's just as much as he can get in, or maybe it's 2 days a week. Like that person is a lot better equipped to go out, compete at white belt or blue belt, maybe get beat up, laugh the whole time, grab a beer with the guys afterwards. Yeah. Because in their head, it's not this like life or death situation. But you take that guy and suddenly he's running the jiu-jitsu business, or suddenly he's trying to be a world champion, And then it gets weirdly personal. And then that rivalry starts to get up. As soon as you add those stakes that aren't just being good at jiu-jitsu, as soon as you add stakes that are in addition to that maturity thing, I think, comes into play, and things get really nasty really fast.
Do you like, I don't know how much last time we talked, you said you weren't really following a lot of jiu-jitsu and the competitors and stuff. Do you like the trash talking aspect? Like, I mean, I kind of listen to a few podcasts as well. They talk about, the 10th Planet guys versus the, Renzo Gracie guys, that type of thing. Do you think, and some of them talk a lot of shit, Gordon Ryan's a big name, big target. And he says some things and people call him out all the time. Do you like that aspect of jiu-jitsu? Do you feel like it helps get excitement? It helps get some of these guys more money and allows them to build a career and a life from jiu-jitsu particularly?
So the marketing side of it's weird so I do marketing for my day job. I run a marketing agency. And every MMA promoter I've ever worked with and talked to, they always talk about how trash talking sells fights. So there's the one side where it's hard to argue against it working. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other side of whether that's actually the right approach or not. And sometimes, things that you don't like work really well. So that's the thing to balance. I personally hate it. I think it's really stupid. And I think that a lot of these young guys get into that trash talking, not really realizing the choices that they're making and what they're setting themselves up for in the long term in terms of like their reputation and their careers and what that's going to mean for them when they're 45.
Yeah.
And maybe they never care, but I think a lot of times have these like 19, 20-year-old, 21-year-old world champions that are really good at jiu-jitsu, phenomenally good at jiu-jitsu. They just have other influences in their life that are not guiding them necessarily in the right path. I've seen a lot of bad jiu-jitsu managers. I've seen a lot of bad jiu-jitsu coaches that they get a phenom and they'll just take advantage of them for the spotlight. Mm-hmm. And not saying any specific names on that front, but again, it gets pretty dirty when other people's interests are involved. So the trash talking, I guess some people like it. I have zero interest in it. And honestly, it makes me want to watch pay-per-views even less when certain people are competing.
Yeah.
But that's also me turning into like an old fogey where I'm like, oh, these whippersnappers, no respect, But it was just as bad before Instagram was a thing.
Yeah.
It was just a lot harder for it to get out.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think that, and I'm not a marketing expert at all, and this is not my field, but I think that if you see two guys really going at it, for somebody that's not knowledgeable about jiu-jitsu, like if you were like, man, this guy's a great competitor and that guy, or these two women are great competitors, I want to see this match. Or these two MMA guys, these fighters, this is going to be a great match, and they're both super respectful. That's a thing. But then to get those outliers with people that don't really know jiu-jitsu or don't know combat sports, and like they just like seeing, it's like, oh, there's a fight breaking out, or two people cussing at each other over here in this area. People are going to just flock to that. That almost like breeds attention and breeds excitement. So I think it's a way to engage people that aren't very knowledgeable about the sport to get them in. Like if you've got Gordon Ryan and somebody else, we both know like some of these guys are very talented in jiu-jitsu. They're really solid competitors that maybe are quiet, and don't say a whole lot. But then if you get guys that are kind of, or people that are new to the sport, don't know the sport, and they hear these two guys that are like, really throwing a lot of insults or whatever, it's going to breed attention to people that like you and I that already know that they're good competitors are going to be interested regardless whether they talk shit or not. But then you add other people that don't really know a lot about these guys and like, oh, well, I just want to see which guy gets his way or whoever gets their way, who imposes their will. And that's the thing. Same thing about MMA. Like, I think the guy that comes to mind, obviously Conor McGregor's great trash talker, but also they got Colby Covington. Mm-hmm. He is, and for him, like I don't know, like he's got a great record. Seems like a solid fighter. He beat Damian Maia, I think, in his last fight. But like some of the stuff he says, I'm like, dude, you're just like, I feel like you're trying too hard. Like, I feel like you're just, go out and win. Like, but you're just breeding all this animosity just to get attention, to get, which I guess is whatever, but I don't really care for it too much.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on the MMA side. I think the WWE model clearly has worked really well for them.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, I think you go pretty much as far back as you possibly can, you'll see that working. Like Tito Ortiz made a career out of it.
Yeah,
it's just clearly been something that's worked really well. I'm not sold on the idea of non-jiu-jitsu people watching jiu-jitsu matches, like jiu-jitsu pay-per-views. Like, I just maybe it happens. I disagree a little bit on that front. And honestly, I think the people that are enjoying the jiu-jitsu drama are jiu-jitsu people, just based on like Reddit and things like that.
Yeah.
It seems like as much as we want to say that it's the new people that are into the drama, I think jiu-jitsu people are just as guilty of being into the drama and fueling it. I mean, the last Polaris event, there wasn't a whole bunch of talk on Reddit except for AJ and Benson, like that's just the only thing they want to talk about because it was some bad personal interactions.
Yeah.
There's some great matches on that card, but let's talk about AJ trash talking after
he always trash talks. That's fucking what he's known for.
But people like it. People react to it. So it's clearly, jiu-jitsu people I think are fueling it just as much as anybody else. I mean, I think we kind of have to be honest about that.
I liked watching Benson win that. I thought he won that match for sure. I enjoyed watching that. I enjoyed watching him take him out, go for a takedown and finish it outside the ring. I don't know. AJ asked for that shit. It was a tough match.
I mean, despite how loud AJ is, I mean, you can't deny that he's skilled.
He's phenomenal. Absolutely. You can't be at that level and just talk shit. That's not enough.
But I think jiu-jitsu people like the drama, and I think part of the drama is what fuels politics. And it's just like this weird. It's just human nature, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, you're adding more stakes to it. You're adding like a higher, it's like, oh God, how's this person going to deal with the downfall of losing, or you really, because the stakes are so much higher. There's more at risk. If you lose, man, you said all this stuff, and if you lose, that's going to look really terrible. It's part of it, I guess, but sometimes that fuels the fire and fuels people.
Yeah, I mean, I wish that even jiu-jitsu matches could just be sold purely on the technical matchup.
Yeah,
but that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be the drama.
Yeah, I liked, I kind of like the guy that's kind of up and coming. It's huge, Craig Jones. I like his demeanor. I enjoy. He's kind of just like, it's like, I just woke up here. I'm going to go and compete and do stuff. And it's like, I like that, like EBI, he had a really great performance in I think EBI 14 where he almost beat Gordon Ryan. And he's like, yeah, I was sick. I didn't know I was going to compete. And I just kind of showed up and I kind of submitted everybody in a minute. It was pretty awesome. I like that aspect of that.
Yeah, I hope it lasts. It seems like those guys, as soon as they hit a bump in their career, a lot of times they fall out of the spotlight really fast because they don't talk super loud. So, like, you look at, like, a Lyoto Machida, and, he's do like the next greatest thing, and as soon as you lost the fight, you never heard about him again because he was just never out there trash talking. Meanwhile, guys that have lost 3 fights in a row are still getting, like, top billing just because they're able to sell fights with their mouths. And
maybe
that's the MMA side. I think the same could be said on the jiu-jitsu side with some of the people that get a lot of the top matches that don't necessarily win them, but they can sell tickets.
Yeah. Do you have any interest, like, in kind of an MMA at this point? I know is there anybody you still follow? Is there anybody you're still kind of a fan of?
Yeah, I mean, I watch it when I can. There's just so many fights now. It's hard to really stay on top of everything that's going on. Spend a lot more time now locally. My new teaching gig, like I said, it's MMA gym. So a lot of the guys there are amateurs. There's a lot of guys going pro. Adam Milstead is out of our gym. He's on the, you're probably not going to have the podcast uploaded probably until next week, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
So let me do some time travel. So Adam Milstead fought last Saturday. He's fighting this Saturday to us as we're talking now.
Yeah.
So it's MMA oriented gym. So I've always coached MMA guys, but it's always been on the side because the school that I was at before was just like a pure jiu-jitsu school. So if I was going to work with MMA guys, I'd have to go to their gyms or do some side training. So I pay a lot more attention to the local stuff now than I was in the past. That's relatively recent. I've been there for 4 or 5 months or something like that now. MMA is a great sport. There's just a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time. I have a hard time being the super fan that I used to be. Just as I try to also be an adult on top of it.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at either of those things. So I'm trying really hard to at least be good an adult.
Yeah. Have you cornered any of your guys that have fought? Have you?
At this new gym, I've not cornered anybody. I've cornered MMA fighters in the past, though. Yeah.
How was that? Tell me about that experience.
I hate it. It's awful. Because I just get like super stressed out about it. Like, so this is gonna sound terrible, but I don't want anybody to do MMA. I don't think it's a great career choice.
It's not terrible at all. It's actually
I don't like seeing people I care about get hurt. I'm super supportive of it, and if they're that interested in doing it, I'll back you all the way. But as a coach, I just really care about the well-being of my students. So every time one of my MMA guys fought, I would just be a mess for like all fight week. To the point that it actually weirdly works because they forgot about feeling nervous because they would like to see how much of a mess I was. They'd be like, let's call Marshall down because Marshall's really upset. So, I mean, it's just stressful. It's a lot to see, to be that close to someone that has a goal and they're in this moment where in 15 minutes they could be one step closer to their goal or pretty far back from where they were. And that's a tough moment to say that, hey, I'm going to be in this with you. And also at the same time, be pretty powerless to impact it in the moment. Right. Because you're stuck on the outside of the cage. All you can do is yell. Like, that's just the best thing that you can do for your guy. And that's tough. It's really hard. Those experiences have been good for me, but it's just, I'm not going to lie that it's not the most pleasant thing in the world.
Well, the consequences of defeat could be a severe injury, could be death, could be as bad as death. There's people who died after MMA fights. So it's not like you're just like screwing around, it's like somebody could die doing this. It's not just getting closer. I think the severity of certain things that can happen that increases the stakes. Like, just makes the stakes that much higher, And yeah, you're right. We don't know. MMA is fairly new, we don't know what the outcomes are going to be, 5, 10, 15 years from now when we got some of these older guys that have retired and see what kind of brain injuries they're dealing with.
Well, I think the research so far has suggested that MMA brain injuries are not as bad as boxing.
About as bad, you think? You said?
Yeah. So Sherdog was doing a bunch of stuff on this a few years ago. Pugilistic dementia.
Right.
So basically, the brain injury research, as far as I understand it, again, you're the medical expert here, not me. The brain injury, as far as I understand it, every hit counts. Doesn't matter if it's big or small. So they see the same kind of like scar tissue build up in the front of the head in boxers that they see in soccer players always hitting soccer balls, in football players and hockey players. Just that repeat trauma is a big problem. So in theory, MMA has less concussions and less of those serious injuries because MMA there's no count, right?
Right, for sure.
You're out. But at the same time, the brain trauma research suggests that most of the damage probably happens in training.
Yeah.
Because that's just where the repeat blows are going to come from, and that's not really how do you regulate that? That's it's like a baseball player over pitching. You can't say, hey, you're only allowed to pitch this many times, people are going to pitch. I mean, people overpitch their kids, right? 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
I was teaching college, and freshmen had Tommy John surgery.
Well, for sure, yeah.
I was like, you're 17. What? Why? How you needed Tommy John surgery already? This is crazy. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing, and the brain stuff is scary. I do worry about that for anybody, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but they're going to be adults, and I'm in combat sports, if that's what they want to do. I have a kind of a rule with, if you want me to corner you, that means we have to work together quite a bit. And if I tell you not to fight, that means don't fight. So you want me in your corner, those are the rules, because you're asking me to be on this journey with you.
Right.
And if I don't have a voice in that journey, and if we're not engaged in it together, that's fine. I'm just not going to go corner some random person. Like, it happens a lot of MMA events where guys are just like, hey man, can you corner me?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Is there a reason you tell somebody not to fight? I mean, why would you tell them not to fight? Is there something that you see?
Guys get hurt, and they don't want to admit they're hurt.
Okay.
And they want to push a little too hard just because that's just the tenacity that they have. That's one thing. Sometimes it's just a bad matchup, or maybe the timing of the fight is bad. So a good friend of mine, he got offered a fight. It was like halfway through wrestling season. He was a wrestling coach, and he had 4 weeks to get ready for it. And I was like, Paul, when are you going to train for this? You don't have any, you would not be prepared to do this. You should not take this fight. He's like, oh, but I really want to. And, because he loves to fight, and he's a great competitor, but the timing just meant that it would have been a very bad decision for him at that moment. And when you're the fighter, that's a tough choice for you to make, because you want to fight, you want to get out there, you don't want to say no, because that doesn't feel like what a fighter does.
Yeah.
So it's important to have other voices in your life that can help you make those decisions, even if you aren't capable, right?
Yeah.
And that's just as true for me in the decisions I make in every aspect of my life. You got to have other perspectives, because sometimes you're not going to see the train barreling down on you that is pretty obvious to everybody else. I'm kind of gassing out on you here. I apologize.
You're good.
I mean to cut you off. It's very nice of you to have me on. So I don't want you to.
Man, it was interesting, it was kind of the reason I just was just interested in kind of how you'd been doing, it was kind of cool. We kind of, we talked, we had the podcast, and I kind of didn't know what was going on, and like kind of how you were doing, and I just kind of started seeing you kind of up on social media a little more, and it was good. It was good to see that, because I was kind of pulling for you, I mean, I don't know you on a personal level, but like it was interesting to me, to get somebody that's kind of been so entrenched in jiu-jitsu. Somebody whose book I read, not knowing who you were. I just picked up your book, like we talked about. In all seriousness, I picked up your book and I just read it. I remember reading it in the Philippines. I was reading it while I went on vacation, and I remember sitting there and I was reading your book, and it was just, it was good, man. I was kind of honest, and I know, like, looking back now, you're like, you probably feel like you said some shit that was, maybe like, kind of childish or more like kind of like, just being a young person, like certain things hit you harder than other things. But it was good. I have a lot of respect for somebody that's going to, put themselves out there like that. And that's something that you put that book out and it sells and it follows you forever. Honestly, it's like something that's always a part of you, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's super cool of you to say that. That's very kind of you. I'm really glad you reached back out to catch up.
It was just cool, man. I really took to a lot of things. I was just starting out. I mean, I've been on this journey myself for a couple of years, just because I love jiu-jitsu and I love helping people stay healthy on the mats. And it just so happened that you've had some injuries and that worked out well. Not worked out well, but kind of it was almost like, I don't know, it was chance or whatever. But it was just, to me, it was important for me to get a response from you, because you responded, and I was kind of surprised, essentially. I was like, oh, shit, he he's going to do the podcast. So I was like excited. I told my wife, I was excited because, you never have expectations. You like, being like the little guy, or somebody just starting out, like you don't always, you hope people go out of their way for you, but you don't expect it, So it's always a nice surprise, but it's also, the whole podcast thing is just so interesting. It's made me grow. Like, it's made me like, shit, how do I hold a conversation with somebody I've never met before that I'm talking to, and they're giving me some stuff that's kind of like intimate details about their life or whatever that is. It's kind of it's one of the beauties of the technology that we have now. It's one of the things that's amazing, but it's also, one of the things that, we're isolated in our phones and stuff like that. I'm a culprit of that as well, but it's really nice. It's nice to talk to somebody that's got like, you've had, your ability to write and put things down and speak in a certain way, kind of was a motivation to me because sometimes there's certain things I want to get out and I can't. I don't know like how the right way to say it is, or writing is a skill that I don't feel like I'm very great at as well. So
you're giving me a lot of credit. Thank you. I don't think that I'm as deserving as much credit as you're giving me, but it's very kind of you to do that. As far as reaching out, I think it's important for everyone that is trying to move forward to be accessible to people that are also trying to move forward.
Yeah, yeah.
I think as soon as you feel like you don't have – as soon as you're too good to reply to someone's Facebook message, like, well, what's going on at that point? Because you've been nothing but nice, and I'm just a dude, and we're just hanging out on a podcast. And I don't think there's any reason to be more serious than that ever, really, The book was a big blessing. It's definitely opened a lot of doors. Like you said, looking back on it, it's very different for me now. I think about it as like it's a time capsule of who I was at that point. I wouldn't change anything of it because it was just an honest account of where my head was then. The tricky thing is when people read that book and they think that's who they're meeting. If they talk to me today, it's like, yeah, I was 21 when I was in Hawaii. That was 10 years ago at this point. And that's just a lot has happened since then. And I'd like to think I've grown a lot.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I'm still super stoked that it got published and that people actually read it, which is really weird to me. That's still really weird to me.
Yeah.
And I get to meet people like you from it, so that's awesome.
But you wrote a book. Like, do you realize? I mean, a lot of people write books, but you wrote a book that actually I try to read more, and I don't have a lot of time now because I'm so busy. But the fact that I read your whole book, I read everything and I enjoyed it. That's an accomplishment, man. I don't know. That's something that's kind of,
thanks, man.
It's cool. And you did give me a lot of, I really genuinely asked you some advice because, you've been in this realm of martial arts and jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. And you've dealt with some of the big time people, in jiu-jitsu. You've trained with BJ Penn and you've worked with Marcelo Garcia and stuff like that. That's huge. You know what I mean? Those are some of the pioneers in the sport, really. Those are some of the biggest, I think influential figures in the sport. BJ Penn being like, taking 4 years to get the black belt. That's shit's unheard of, I mean, now it probably happens, but man, back when he did it, crap, that's nobody does. And then he won like mundials and stuff like that. That's crazy. Marcelo Garcia, people, some of these, I don't know, if people don't know who he is, you better go research him and watch what he does because the guy is a freak. Above freaks. I mean, there's nothing, you can't compare anyone. I think he's a unique individual. There's not going to be a jiu-jitsu practitioner like him ever again. So
yeah, I've had a lot of fun. I've been very fortunate. Yeah, it's been a blast, and I'm hoping to continue. I mean, that's why I love the sport earlier, and it's adventures like that make it interesting for me.
Brought you back almost,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to walk away from. Like, who am I if I leave the sport? And that's not a question that I don't think I want to answer. So I'm just going to stay, not have to be existential. So I'll just stay in the sport. It is not worry about it. But yeah, man, it's been good. I've been fortunate to have good people help me out when I needed it. Yeah. And that's been a big deal. A lot of people were very generous. The Penn family was a big part of that too. So yeah, I've been able to do a lot of cool stuff, but I've been able to do that cool stuff because people help me out.
Yeah, no, and I think when I have people reach out to me and it's always kind of makes my day, honestly, like people reach out and ask me questions and sometimes there are questions that you're like, I tore my knee. When can I get back to jiu-jitsu? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what your medical history, I don't know if you're overweight or underweight or if you're like 90 or 30. Like, I don't know if you have any other, it's hard, but it's questions like that. But it's the fact that people are reaching out and the people are interested in what you have to say and they want to hear your advice. And you get those moments of like positive reinforcement. Like, man, you inspired me. Like honestly, like, I'll tell you, you told me, get on Reddit, be active in Reddit, do stuff and I did that, and I feel like that's helped. Obviously, I kind of did this on a whim just to have fun and talk to people. But if it takes off and does something, I'm sure I've grown since we spoke last time. I'm obviously not where I want to be, but I'm growing, and that's all I can ask for. That people still want to hear what I have to say to an extent, and that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. Yeah, you've been hustling, and that's you're farther forward than yesterday. I mean, that's really all you can ask for, right? Yeah. I mean, no, it's been cool stuff. And
what do you so as far as like, what do you have in the works? We can kind of, and I know you're kind of probably close to being done, man. I know you had what do you have in the works? What are you looking for? What are your plans? We'll kind of end on that.
Yeah, so 2 big things to check out. So Artechoke Media is my jiu-jitsu project where all my jiu-jitsu stuff goes. We publish instructionals and books. Yeah. We just did an instructional with Nelson Fuentes. He's the founder of Inverted Gear. His book is Isolate to Dominate. Basically, it's all about how you can isolate one limb to control a position and dictate the match from that. So smashes, passes, sweeps, all kinds of stuff there. Ties, drags. That was a fun instructional to do. We also did a book with Josh Vogel. He does the Sloth Report. He's a team balance black belt. Like super jiu-jitsu nerd brain kind of guy, really cool perspective on the sport. We did a whole instructional on the underhook half guard, which I thought I knew the underhook half guard. I was like, that's like week 2 jiu-jitsu stuff is underhook half guard. And Josh totally blew my mind. He's like, we should do a whole instructional on this. And I was like, is there enough there?
Yeah.
60 techniques later, the rabbit hole goes pretty deep, and it's what I thought I knew about the position has totally changed. Yeah. That was a fun instructional to do. So we got a bunch of other instructionals in the works. We're just waiting on the authors to get them finished. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I'm just teaching a bunch and trying to get better and just enjoying my time on the mat.
What about writing? Like, I think you've written some articles for Inverted Gear. You've written some stuff for them. Like, is there anything that's still inspiring you to write, or is there anything that interests you to write about?
Yeah, the writing thing's weird because it's a job for me.
Okay.
I enjoy jiu-jitsu writings. I get to write about jiu-jitsu. So I write for Inverted Gear a lot. I write for Jiu-Jitsu Magazine. Mm-hmm. I was doing stuff for BJJ Weekly, and I've written for a ton of other jiu-jitsu sites and places. But right now it's just Inverted Gear and Jiu-Jitsu Magazine. Yeah, I mean, it's an excuse for me to play with ideas I've had in my head. Mm-hmm. And by putting it down on paper, I have to really think about them and formulate the ideas more concretely. But most of my writing is for other clients or for my marketing work. So I do a ton of business writing these days. Pays the bills. Sure. I heard Eddie Bravo say one time, there's no money in jiu-jitsu, and the jiu-jitsu pie is not super big in terms of cash flow, which is fine. So I'm just doing other stuff.
Right. So you're writing non-jiu-jitsu related stuff, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I've done, I did a business book a couple of years, like a year ago, and I probably have another business book that I'll publish. just because that's what pays the bills.
That's cool.
And I enjoy it, but it's not as fun as doing like a Marcel Garcia book. But
sure.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, those don't come along very often. But a bunch of those are out of print, actually.
The Marcel book is out of print.
Both of them, I think there's the X-Guard one. He's got an X-Guard one, and then Advanced Jiu-Jitsu Techniques.
Yeah, the Advanced is the one I wrote, so that's really the only one I care about.
One, I'm going to have you sign it for me. I'm kidding.
What's that?
I'm going to have you sign it for me. I need your autograph on that bad boy. It's going to be
Marcel Garcia's Advanced Jiu-Jitsu, then Marshall Carper's Mediocre Jiu-Jitsu.
That's all right. It's Jiu-Jitsu, man. Mediocre Jiu-Jitsu is better than no Jiu-Jitsu, so think of it that
way. Yeah, I'd like to see those books back in print. I would.
They're awesome. They're great books. But you know, with YouTube and stuff like that, it kind of, I don't know if it makes books obsolete, but having a tangible product in your hand, something about that. It's like having.
I think books are better at different things. That's all. I think YouTube videos are better at different things. Well, I think they just fill different gaps. So it's a bummer to see the print stuff fade. Which is why we're doing a lot of stuff we do with Artechoke, where we still do. So all of our instructionals are GIFs, videos, and text. So the text is like the zoomed out strategy stuff.
Yeah.
That would be really boring, where it's just like the instructor talking to you for 10 minutes in the YouTube video while the partner like plays with his toes in the corner. Yeah. We try to eliminate that by putting that in writing. And then the GIFs are for just looping the technique over and over and over again. So the instructor doesn't have to be like, let me show you the arm bar again, and just kind of artificially extend the video. And then the video is great for that like private lesson experience. Yeah. So that's why we take that 3-tier approach. I think losing the writing is a big mistake in Jiu-Jitsu instructionals. Yeah. But it's also a lot harder to do and takes longer, so we don't release nearly as many instructionals as the video guys. But what are you going to do?
Well, Marshall?
Yes, sir.
We did it.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
I'm going to let you off the hook, man. I know you've had a migraine, so I'm going to let you off the hook. I've got more questions, but maybe I'll save them for another time. How's that sound?
We should catch up again soon.
It would be great, man. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, your product, where would they go? If they want to train with you, anything like that, how can they get a hold of you? Yeah,
so I'm teaching out it's called the Academy in Pittsburgh. If anybody's local to the area, it used to be Pittsburgh Fight Club. New owner, fantastic place to train, great people. Artechoke Media is the jiu-jitsu company that I run. Artechoke spelled with an E instead of an I. That's an old like jiu-jitsu joke that now the younger generation doesn't get, so maybe I picked the wrong name. But yeah, what are you gonna do? So look me up on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. If you guys have questions about anything, happy to help, answer, point you in the right direction. There's a lot of good people in the sport, and if I'm not one of them, I'll point you to one of them.
You are, man. You've never, when I reach out to you to kind of talk to you, you've always been very receptive, very responsive.
Oh, thanks, man.
It means a lot, man. Thank you for your time. I know you're busy, and I'll make sure to reach out again because I've got more questions and more stuff I want to talk about. I want to see where you're at a year from now, and I appreciate the time, man. It's always a pleasure to hear your side of things and your opinion on jiu-jitsu and the state of jiu-jitsu and everything. So I feel I'm happy that I see you on the mats. And I see you posting stuff of you being on the mats. I think to me, it's important because I feel like I always tell everybody that anybody can train jiu-jitsu, and it's nice to see somebody that's dealt with some of the injuries you've dealt with and still train. Maybe it's not the exact capacity that you want to train in, but you're training, and that's more important than not training, in my opinion. Yeah. So thanks again, man. Dude,
I appreciate it. Keep growing, and I'll definitely I'm watching it. So I'll catch up with you here soon again, I'm sure.
I appreciate your time, man. Again, thank you, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon. Thank you again to my guest, Marshal Carper, for joining me on the podcast. You guys can check him out on Facebook, Marshal Carper. His company, Artechoke Media, spelled with an E. Make sure to check them out for a lot of instructional videos on jiu-jitsu specific content. Again, guys, if you love the podcast, please leave a review on iTunes. Share the podcast. And again, thank you for tuning in. And we will see you next time. More videos, more podcasts on jiu-jitsutherapist.com and injury prevention videos on YouTube, The Jiu-Jitsu Therapist. See you guys next time. Thanks again.